Okay, here we are. Welcome to Transaction Review and Calculator Practice. This is our April session. I'm super glad to have you along with me today. And this is just a disclaimer. Read it real quick because here it goes. Okay, so for today, here's what we'll cover. We're going to talk about what kind of notes are best. And the reason that I'm doing this presentation is because so many of my investors, some come with a short-term mentality, some with a long-term, some aren't sure what to do. So I really just wanted to create a little presentation that will speak to that. So what kinds of notes are best? How does your ROI or return on investment / yield really shake out? You know, how does it really work out in the real world when you're loaning money or buying notes? Why longer term? I'm going to make this point towards the end of our presentation, why longer term discounted notes can be more profitable than short term lending. And at the end, I just have a couple of tables that I've put together where I'll break down the pros and cons of private lending versus discounted notes on a couple spreadsheets. So we'll do that right at the end. So let's just get into it. What kind of notes are best? You've got performing or non-performing. Obviously, this is performing means that those payments are coming in regularly as expected, and they have for the majority of the note. Non-performing notes have been a really big, sexy thing since the meltdown in 2008. Still a big business. Fannie Mae is still selling off notes. And that's where you create a job for yourself, basically, by taking something that's not paying, and it's your job to make it start paying. So it's a completely different type of note. To me, a lot more work, it's farther down the rabbit hole for the beginning note investor. You have notes that are secured by residential and commercial property. Obviously, the bread and butter houses are a nice kind of collateral because most people understand them and everyone needs a roof over their head. Commercial, I do have maybe a handful of commercial notes that are super solid, but residentials is a really nice thing to start with, because if you had to end up owning the property, are you going to know what to do with it, and is it going to be easy to turn back around? So bread and butter, middle of the road single family residence is usually pretty easy to turn around in the quickest possible time. Should we go long term or short term? Now, a lot of people say, yeah, I don't want my money tied up. I want my money back. And other people are like, yeah, no, I want my money to keep working for me. If this is in my self-directed IRA, I don't want to have to, I want my money keeping to work for me. And so it's usually I try to get people to move towards a blend of both in their portfolio. And we'll talk a little bit more towards the end. But short term, I don't want to do that right now. Okay, and interest only or amortizing. Some people only like interest only loans because it's so easy to figure out what your return is and what your interest is. Amortizing loans, discounted notes tend to be fully amortizing, meaning there's not a balloon payment. They amortize, they fully die over the course of the term of the note. And so you're getting principal and interest back both. And some people don't like that because they look at it and they say, oh, well, I'm not getting as much interest if I did an interest only loan over the same period, I'd get more interest. Yeah, but then you also probably have some more risk too, right? So there's a lot of pluses and minuses anything that I miss here will wrap up at the end with those tables that I put together for you. How about geographic diversity? Some people say I only want to invest in my backyard. And that is great because you can drive to the collateral, you can have personal relationships, face-to-face relationships with the people that you're dealing with. But also and I'm doing more of that right now where I'm working here in my backyard of Carson City where I moved 2 years ago. And I'm really excited about just working in my local market and making a difference in my own community. But there's something to be said for having not all of your eggs in one basket, because if there's a big either physical catastrophe or economic calamity with some big employer going under or something, if all of your whole portfolio is in one region, then it's exposed to potentially all of it's exposed at the same time. So, all right, so let's just start with loaning $100,000. That's pretty much easy for everyone to figure out. Here's a really conservative private money loan that you could do. So here's a nice house. Property's worth, let's just say as is value right now, not after repaired value, not ARV, but as is value is 153.8. So if I want to be conservative as a private money lender, I'm not going to loan any more than 65% of that purchase. So that means the buyer has to come in with 53.8 and has to have his own closing costs and rehab costs, money to do the rehab. And I'm just bringing in this very conservative 65% LTV, loan to value, hard money loan. And, and let's just say that I'm just charging 10%. That's a very fair rate. And let's say it's for a year because they're going to rehab, fix, and flip this thing. And that turns out to $833 a month, interest only. And what's the return on investment? So we can see that that if it went the full time, you would have $10,000, right? 10% on $100,000 is $10,000. But realistically, that it's going to pay off before then. So let's just say in 8 months they sold it and they paid you off. You got a demand letter from escrow. So let's see what you ended up getting. Your return on investment for that $100,000 loan, you made 6,666. Uh-oh. Anyway, and we'll talk about how that's a 7% return for the year, especially if, and realistically, it's going to take you time to turn that money back around. So let's just stop for a second. Let me bring up the financial calculator, and I think I need to go here. Okay, so here's our financial calculator. Let's just go over some of the numbers. How did I come up with that again? So we said the property was worth 153.8, and my maximum loan to value, LTV, is going to be 65%. So I'm going to go times 0.65. Remember, percentages, move the decimal 2 places to the right. I already know that that's my max investment, but 100,000, pretty close, right? So I go, okay, I can be good with $100,000 loan. Obviously, the difference between my loan and the purchase price, then he's got to come up with closing costs and have his own money for rehab. So how did I figure, okay, the $100,000 loan, that's going to go in here at PV, present value. On some financial calculators, it might be LA, loan amount. I also know that, also it's so easy, right? Just like times 0.10, right? That's the interest for a whole year for 12 months. Divided by 12 is $833 per month. If I wanted to figure it out just using the calculator, I'd recall PV. And then if I want to put it here, I'm just going to show you different ways you can use the calculator. Future value is the balloon payment. This is money going out of my pocket now, money that's coming back later. That's the balloon. Here's the loan. And we wrote a 12-month note, and the interest rate here is 10. So I'm going to solve for the payment because I entered all of these four. Let's find the fifth. It's the exact same number. So just more ways to, and really it wouldn't matter. I could put 400 months in here, right? And it wouldn't change the payment, right? When we're talking about interest only. All right. So if you're the one, if you're the broker yourself or you're charging points, you can put, additional money in your pocket. But usually there's a broker or someone who's the deal finder, the rainmaker that's making some points up front. It pays off in 8 months. So let's figure that again. And these two numbers are always negative. That's how I put them in, and these three numbers are always positive. That's how I keep track of it. So just remember payments, future value, just my personal preference of how to do that. I'm going to change it to a positive number. So this came in 6 times for the investor. Oh, I'm sorry, 8 times 8. That's where we came up with our number of 6s there. And realistically, what if it takes, you get paid off, you had your 6,600 plus your 100,000 back, and maybe it takes you 4 months. It's not unrealistic. It might take you 4 months to get your money back out. Let's say you had another $100,000 loan. Unlikely it would be exactly the same, but just, what if? So basically you had 0% for 4 months and 10% for 8 months. So the 666 divided by 100,000 is how we come up with your 7%. If you only had, even if you're only down 1 month out of the year, you get paid off, and then right away you get a deal, it closes 2, 3, 4 weeks later, you're still down a month, right? So even if you got, let's do 9 times 11, you got 91 divided by 100,000. Okay, you're basically making 9%. You can say all day long that, hey, yeah, I only lend my money out at 10%, nothing less, or 9% or 12%, whatever your number is. But unless, you got to factor in that downtime. That's just a real life sort of number that people sort of kind of forget about. And they say sometimes they'll put their money on the sidelines for 6 months waiting for just the right deal. Okay, I have some people say, no, unless I get at least 11%, I'm not going to loan out my money. Well, they'll let their money sit there for 6 months. So by the time they lend it out, they're making half that, if they're lucky, 5 or 6%. But let's say this is pretty realistic, maybe somewhere between 7 and 9%, even if you're lending out at 10. So just keep that in the back of your mind. All right, so let's move on. If we buy a discounted note for $100,000, same $100,000, we just play it a little bit differently. Okay. This house, someone who owned it, let's just say, what's a typical scenario? Somebody, okay, mom and dad die, and they leave the estate. In the estate, there's this house, and they do owner carry to the tenant. And let's say that this property, I want to keep as much as I can, apples to apples. So let's say it's about $160,000. Okay, really similar to the last property we just loaned on. And let's say that tenant has been very dutiful and saving their money, and they've got a 20% down payment, which is great, right? There's a reason why conventional lending requires 20% down. And the reason is because statistically speaking, there's a much, much, much lower incidence of default. So the 10% on an owner-occupied is considered acceptable, but 20% and plus is, the more the better. There's nothing that can replace protective equity in a deal, right? When we did the loan just before, we had the guy come in with 35% equity. 35% of the purchase price, 20% down on an owner-occupant is really great. And so these kids on the house that they inherited, there's a note and first deed of trust, right? Or mortgage, depending on the state. And it, with a UPB or principal balance of $128,000. And we'll do the math on this a little bit later, but 128 and 32 add up to 160. And let's say that those kids, they don't want to hang out and receive the payment. They want to cash out now and split the money up and go their separate ways. So we're going to come in and buy it for $100,000, just to put that same $100,000 to work. Okay, so here's the note investment, just to go over it again. First deed of trust or mortgage, that's the security instrument, right? You have the promissory note, which is that spells out the terms of what the borrower promises to pay, and then you have the security instrument, which is the deed of trust or mortgage, that is the kind of the teeth in it. Like, if you don't pay as you promised, then I'm going to take your property back, foreclose on you. The interest rate, the face rate on the note is 6.5%. And you can see that this is a much See, the hard money loan that we did before, 10% is a pretty fair rate for a rehab or flipper kind of person. But when you're talking about homeowners, and if they're paying fair market value, usually the interest rates tend to be a little bit lower, a little bit higher, obviously, than they could get if they were getting a bank loan. But still, face rate on the note, this is a pretty typical, somewhere between 5 and 9% on an owner carry note generally. The term 360, most people do this, make a 30-year note. Number one, it makes the house affordable, right? But number two, most people think that the only way, unless they're advised, the only way to put a deal together is how the bank does it. And banks usually do 30-year fully amortized notes. In this case, we're going to pretend that it's got 12 months of seasoning. That means that it's tasty. It's tasty because it's got a little salt on the deal, making it savory, because we've had 12 months of on-time payments proving that this person has the ability and willingness to pay, and at least functional enough to get a check in the mail or whatever every single month. So that's a good thing. And the monthly payment turns out to $809. It's not all that different than the other payment of $833, but that was interest only, and this is fully amortizing loan, and we'll see how that looks. So let's do the math. So what are we going to make on this note? We're going to talk about what is the yield or the ROI if it goes to full maturity, which is 29 years from now. And then we're going to do the thing with discounted notes that you will never ever have with the short-term loans is that statistically speaking, these notes pay off sooner than expected, and it gets you that unearned discount can be so attractive. Okay, this is where I'm going to bring up, and we're going to go over these numbers. So when you find a note or you help a note get created by working with the agent, so let's just take $160,000. That was the price, and it was a 20% down payment, right? 0.2. That's how we come up with the $32,000 minus the purchase price leaves us 80% of the note, which is $128, and that's going to go here in my present value. This is just my custom. There's other ways to use this thing, and I would say that In a Day Development does a phenomenal job with their app. If you don't have it on your iPhone or somewhere, I would go get it. They have a lot of super great features, plus a lot of training videos, and I don't even know how to use this to a fraction of its potential. So that's just a plug for them. Now it's fully amortizing. There's no balloon, so there's no future value. There's no big lump sum. I'm going to put a 0 in future value. All amortizing notes are going to have 0 in the future value. The face rate on the note, 6.5%. And we said it was 30 years, so 30 times 12 is 360. And we're going to solve for payment. That's where we come up with the 809.05. And how many payments are left? So now I got to figure out, okay, the note seller, the kids want to sell their note for $100,000. And the first thing I'm going to do is go, before I even calculate for yield, I'm going to take that $160,000, and let's pretend that we already have an appraisal or a BPO, broker price opinion, and it's actually worth this. It's not worth 140. Okay, it's worth 160 or more. And so my max ITV, remember before when I'm doing a loan, I'm doing a max LTV, loan to value, or I'm going to do a maximum investment to value, ITV, same thing. So this is my first calculation. What's the most that I could potentially have at risk against this collateral? Okay, 104,000. Okay, good. They need 100,000. I know that I can pay 100,000. Now I have to go, is it going to meet my yield requirements? So if I put out 100,000, that goes here in my PV, present value, how many payments do I have left? Not 360, right? I'm going to recall this number, and I'm going to minus 12. I only have 348 payments left. Okay. So there's no balloon. This is the monthly payment, and I'm going to get 348 of these guys. And I'm going to put out this money. I wonder what's my yield. Let me solve for yield. Okay, for all intents and purposes, 9%. And you're going, that's a little low. But remember, what was the effective yield on lending money short term and churning the money? Even if you were good and put it right back to work, like within a month, in 30 days, you're still doing no better than this, right? And you're having to evaluate another deal and more wire fees and more documentation and all of that. So actually not too bad, especially if this is retirement money. And what's the statistical likelihood of this paying off? Either they're going to sell the property or refinance. If these people, let's say their credit, for some reason, they need another year, and then they're going to go get a bank loan at 3.5% or 4%. The statistical likelihood this is going to pay off early. But I'm going to buy it at a 9% yield, even if it goes to full maturity. Even if I have to wait 29 years for this thing to pay off, I'm still, the principal that I have left in this deal is going to be making me 9%, which is better than most hard money at 10%. Okay. So, let's just say I agree. I think that's great. It's a solid deal. It's in my backyard. It's only 2 miles from my house. I like it. It's good family living there. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. I'm going to pull up the, that's the amortization. So this is the amortization. This is, T-Value is a program that I use day in and day out. It's a PC only program. T-Value. It's a must-have if you're in the note business, in my opinion. It costs $150 and it's well worth it. I print out this amortization just to point out these guys have an amortization schedule too. See that? They have this amortization showing you how this thing plays out. And I know that you do this thing to print it or send it somewhere, email it, whatever. Just saying, this app is really so cool. All right, so this is the note as it was written and that we just recreated on our calculator. Because anytime someone gives me a note, the first thing I do is see if the whole deal makes sense and I can recreate it. And if the numbers are off, I want to know why. So we say, okay, so by the time that we're actually buying it, right, 12 payments in, the balance is only 99. Oh, that's not right. That's the investor amortization. I brought off the one. Okay, so actually, this is just the investor brings in 100,000. If we're trying to figure out the balance of the note when we're getting it, I have to recreate it. And this is what I do all the time, even though it looks like I just made a mistake. It's like in the regular course of my business, I go back over and I do this stuff all the time. I'm going to recreate the original note. And it doesn't hurt to see it more times. Okay, now I've recreated it. Now I'm going to see the amortization schedule. Okay, so by the time we're in 12 months, we can see that the borrower's balance, the UPB, unpaid principal balance, that we are buying is 126.5, and we're buying it for 100. So basically, if it paid off the next month, we'd put $26,000 in our pocket, right? Which is really nice. You're never going to make a private loan for 100, interest-only loan, and get back 125. 126. With this, it's possible. Not always likely, but it's possible. You can see how that can be stunning. So this is the amortization of the original note. Now this is the amortization of the investor bringing in, and remember we said it was just shy of 9%, right? 9% note. For 100,000 out, you're starting to get 809.05 in. You can see most of it is interest right here, and a little bit of principal. And so you can see that, let's just go all the way down. And at the end, it kind of totals up what you get. All right. So this is the total payments. You put $100,000 out. This is if it goes to full maturity. You have to wait 29 years for your last payment to come in. 281.5, 100. There's your 100 in principal back. You've gotten it all back over. Plus, you've made 181,000. For a young person who has like a Roth IRA, wouldn't this be awesome? Wouldn't you love when you're 25 or something, or 30, to put $100,000 in, and then by the time you're retiring, it's tripled itself. So anyway, that's just to show you that. So if it goes to full maturity, you make the 9%. Now, what happens if, statistically speaking, it pays off in 7 years? Let's just see what happens with the yield. That means that this whole time you've been getting 809.05, and on year 7, which means it's 8. The note is 8 years old because you came in a year later. And well, how do we know that the payoff is this amount? Well, let's see. That's on March 1st, 2023. Let me go see the original amortization. And we'll go down to March 1st. This is 8 years in, 96 payments or so, right? Where is that? 2023. Okay, so we can see that this is their payment. I guess we're off just a little bit here. Anyway, but you go back to the original amortization, what the borrower's paying on, and so there you've been paid down on what you're owed, and now they're paying you off, and so you get this lump sum payment of $114,000. So what does that? Let's just see what happens. So you got 83 payments. Let's say 84, pays off in 7 years. And oops, I have to go back to, you paid $100,000, right? 84 payments, and then at the end, what are we getting? That last payment is 114,289, and I'm going to put that as a negative number because it's going over here in my future value. Let's figure out the yield, okay? Because I put in this number, that was in there, I put in that number, and I want to know what my yield is if it pays off. Awesome. It's 11%. And super safe, right? Because I've been getting some of my principal back this whole time. So even if the property decreased in value, my protective equity is going up, and the attachment that the borrower has, because they know that they owe less and less in that property. In this case, in T value, I might have been off by a month or something, but you can see it's 11%. So there you go. You did better, had less work to do, had a safer deal, and you made 11%. And this is really mild. A lot of times, when you buy a 30-year note or something, and it pays off in the typical 7 to 10 years, a lot of times your yields can jump. It's not hard to get 13, 14, 15%. And so anyhow, I remember back in the day, I can't be telling these stories. I'm already going over, but the people who will go long in their portfolio will generally outperform only the short-term thinking people. Okay, so let's get back to the presentation. How do I do this? Okay. So that just shows you kind of how those things can play out. I think both are really great. So here's the tables of the spreadsheets that I put together just to do a recap of this whole thing. And I could keep talking and talking, and I can't go too long here. But the term, so we have private loans in the middle, and we have discounted notes over on the right. So let's think of the term. Private loans are usually short, right? Usually 2 to 3 years max, but they can be anywhere. I've got some 6-month short-term loans out. I've got some 2 years, and once in a while we'll go up to 5. 8 years is kind of long. That's really unusual. So usually it's short term, and it's interest only. Whereas let's go to the right. Discounted notes, usually they're fully amortizing with or without a balloon. Most owner-occupied notes, consumer loans don't have balloons these days because of Dodd-Frank, but usually they're fully amortizing. A lot of times I'm buying up to a 15-year note. If I buy a 30-year note, it's pretty much 50 cents on the dollar generally, because those future payments just aren't going to buy very much, out then. So, all right, for private loans, the interest yield on those, depending, can be anywhere from, well, it can be anything anyone agrees to, but generally private loans, hard money loans, are somewhere between 8 and 15%, with the average, I would say, being 10 to 12%. With discounted notes, but then there again, the effective yield, not the face rate at what you're loaning money out, but by the time you figure all the time that your money's sitting doing nothing, then your effective yield is going to be closer to 7 and 8. And a lot of hard money people will tell you that, even if they're used to loaning their money at 12%, they will, if they're honest, they're saying, no, effective yield's more like 7, 8, 9% if I'm lucky. With the discounted notes, usually buy at an 8% yield to maturity, but it can go anywhere. I've had stuff where my yield is actually 20, in the high 20s, sometimes over 30 on these things. Typical, but you should feel really good in today's climate of what's being bought. If you're getting an 8 to 12% yield on a discounted note that's really solid, you should consider that a great passive investment. The type of interest on a private loan is interest only, and discounted notes are amortizing. And some people, like I said, they don't like getting principal back, because then they're like, oh, well, my money's not working for me. Yes, but what it is doing is making the investment that you already have safer and safer with each monthly payment, and then you take that principal that you're getting back and you put it back out to work, right? So, and remember, you're having exposure to that really sweet unearned discount that you don't get with loans. So it's kind of both ways. The LTV/ITV, loan to value, investment to value, is pretty much the same, right? 65%. You have to decide what you're comfortable with, but just standard conservative would be 65%, whether you're loaning or buying a note. Where the collateral is, a lot of people, mostly they do private loans in their general local community. They're hooking up with a hard money broker, which is a great way to get started in notes and get your money working. Is just hook up with a good hard money lender. They've got a flow of deals, and you can get your money to work pretty easily without having to create a whole business around it yourself. Discounted notes, I've got notes all over the U.S. and a lot of times I'm in less than 65%. My goal, I really love being 50% of a value of the collateral or less. How much capital you need to start? With private loans, depending on where you live, you can maybe need $50,000, because look, someone's trying to flip a property. I do have a few people that are borrowing in the $25,000 to $35,000 range on smaller, but the less money you have available to start, just keep in mind that the collateral is generally going to be, you're not going to make a first position $50,000 loan on a $500,000 stick built in Southern California, right? Or somewhere that's got high value. So maybe the property is only worth 70, 80, 90,000, 100,000. Discounted notes, the smallest ever note that I bought, because it was part of a 4-note portfolio, was 3,250. But generally, if you have 15,000, at least you can buy a partial, if not a small note, when they come up. Who pays for default, foreclosure, and resale? You do. you're the one, you pay. If you're the private lender, you're going to pay for it, and if you own the discounted note, you're also going to pay for it, unless people that would rather joint venture and have a partnership, then that's something that I generally cover. All right, is there a potential upside bump? No. When you make a loan, you only get the money back that you put out, unless you end up foreclosing and there's equity. If you put out $100,000 and they gut the property and disappear, then when you resell it, you might take a loss. You might only get $80,000 to get out of that thing, right? But if it's worth 120, then you just made money. But generally, on a loan, you're just going to get back the money that you lent plus interest, where we just went over that discounted note deal. And you can see that, yes, even without foreclosure, even without having to foreclose and having to be complicated and stressful, you could get like what if we bought that note that had a $126,000 balance and it paid off like in later that year? You can see that you would put $25,000 in your pocket, and gosh, it's really hard to beat that, right? That is a phenomenal return right there for the amount of safety and lack of hassle that you had. So that's a summary there. Hopefully that's helpful. You can take a screen cap or something. And let's see, interest only. Okay. Keeping with in the categories of interest only, which our private loans generally are, and the amortizing product, accounting for interest is super easy to keep track of, right? Because you're not getting any money back. People think they're making more money, a better yield on interest only loans sometimes, because they don't have a financial calculator. And if you're trying to figure out your yield on an amortizing note, you have to be able to use an amortization schedule. Or know how to use a financial calculator, and some people just can't wrap their heads around that. Investment capital on an interest only, all your principal keeps working. On the amortizing loans, when you get that principal back, you got to assemble it together and put it out into another deal to keep your money working for you. But still, the LTV, ITV, it stays constant. The interest only products, let's say that if we have a $100,000 loan out on that one house, what if that house decreases in value? What if it goes down to only, instead of being worth 153, what if it's now only worth 125 by the time you get it back, or something? You can see that your protective equity and your loan to value has, your protective equity has decreased and your loan to value has increased. Whereas with the amortizing product, where they're paying down principal each month, your ITV, investment to value, can decrease and your protective equity increases, or at least stays the same, even if the house goes down in value. That's what I really like that about the amortizing product. The protective equity, right? It can go down, like we just said, and with the amortizing product, your protective equity goes up because of the principal pay down. How about idle funds? Short term, the loans are short term, and the money may sit idle between deals, right? We did that example in the very beginning. So it's almost impossible to keep it going 100% of the time. So even if you're loaning at 10%, you can bet that you're making somewhere between 7 and 9 typically on your money, and that's being pretty aggressive, right? And the amortizing, you can see that we did better. We did at a minimum. It just keeps working, and you don't have to work and get it back out there, right? It keeps working, and we can see we're going to end up with 9% minimum, and with 11% really statistically likely. And so you can see that was the third point that I was going to make in the beginning, was that discounted notes can outperform even the short-term interest-only notes, but it's kind of nice to have a blend, right? Because sometimes you don't want all of your money locked up. Sometimes you're going to want to know, hey, if something else comes up, I want to have I want to be able to shake loose some capital, or if interest rates, do something really different. I don't want to be stuck out there very long. So there's all sorts of pros and cons, and I haven't had a chance to go over everything. But is there any questions before we kind of wrap this up tonight?
We we have Chris Marks and Ken Bucco
Oh,
on the
Ken,
meeting. Do you guys
oh,
have any
Ken,
questions?
any comments on this whole thing? I didn't know you guys were there because I'm having Axel handle the tech so that I don't make any dramatic big boo-boos anymore from a technical standpoint. So, hi, I'm
Hi.
always glad to talk to you guys.
Yeah, no, that was great. I love
No,
the,
that was really good. Really enjoyed it.
you know me, I love the, the charts.
Well, and thanks. These charts here are like
Yeah,
all the cool stuff that
yeah,
Axel
but
put
your
together.
presentation was really easy to follow. It was really well done. Thanks.
Oh, good. Yeah. So, what did you guys end up deciding on that the Alabama deal? Did you guys
We're
talk
probably,
about it?
yeah, we're gonna have an attorney working on it. We're probably gonna do a deed in lieu on that and take care of it.
Yeah. Are you just gonna sell it with an agent? Or what are you guys thinking? To keep it as a rental or what?
We haven't got that far on it yet. Biggest thing is that they're gonna do a title search and make sure all the taxes are back paid on it, and make sure there's no extra liens or anything on the property. And
Exactly.
then we were gonna contact Justin and basically, the way I looked at it, I mean, we deal with you, we deal with other people. I believe in integrity and honor. I think how they ought to handle it is either they give you your money back, and part of the contract was they could go extend it one more year, but it doesn't seem like they plan on doing anything other than basically not doing it the way they're supposed to do it. So we're basically probably just going to do a deed in lieu like you were suggesting on it.
Yeah, yeah. I'll keep you guys informed just as I'm doing researching this and meeting people. So I'll just keep sharing anything that information that I kind of come across as I'm dealing with those other two properties. There's another guy that's an investor out there. He has a similar product of what True Wholesale started out to be, as a turnkey rental thing, and of course they're going to need to make a profit on it. But I'm hoping that there'll be more than one way to get the cash out, depending. But apparently people can buy. They've got investors that only have to put 20% down, and then they can get like a bank loan on these turnkey rental properties. And so they're not even, I said, what about if we would take 50% and carry the rest? And they're like, yeah, no, the bank can do better for our investors now. So I go, wow, that's a really good product that they have.
Wow.
Basically, it's a cash out price or whatever. But anyway, that's just with finding someone already that's ready to buy with cash, not listing with an agent, which I haven't decided. Depends on what their offers come back at, but
Is that through
anyhow,
Justin or through someone else?
someone else.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, Ken, are you still on?
I am. Can you hear me, Don?
I can. Always great to hear your voice. So,
How did you do with that forced fire insurance? Did you get that taken care of?
oh, shoot, I wanted to do it because I knew you were going to ask me that if you showed up on the call, and I didn't even do it yet. I can't believe it. And we're already going to summary judgment on that one duplex in Ohio, and I just keep forgetting. I don't know how, but yeah, I was worried you were going to show up and ask me that question tonight.
All right.
But yeah, I've got the two properties that I need to do ASAP. So yeah, that's bad.
Okay.
Luckily, it's only my money on those deals.
Right.
But
I just want to do a big shout out to our Golden State Warriors. So in case anyone else across the country is in envy of us, I understand why.
hey, we're all, well, you three are in California. I'm the only one not in
Okay.
California on the call.
All right.
Oh, you're pretty close though.
Yeah, I'm only less than an hour away from California. over there, South Lake Tahoe. But yeah, any comments, Ken? I think you should just share before we end the call. Do you feel like it? I mean, any comments on this presentation, or if not, I just want you to share with Chris and Susan what you're doing, and anyone else who's listening later, because you're doing loans and you're breaking these sort of standard sort of numbers. You're blowing them out of the water. You're blowing
No,
them out of the water with
I'm
the
doing,
loans.
yeah, and some of them I am, but a lot of them I'm just doing just your normal loans that you can get through brokers or, mortgage brokers or whoever. And those are from like 10 to 12%. And I try to do those because
Mm-hmm.
like you said, if you're not putting your money to work, then even if you're getting a 15 or 20%, but you're losing on 3 or 4 or 5 months worth to try to get the deal, then you're really not getting that 20% that you're supposed to get if you have the loan to maturity or however many months you have it. But
Mm-hmm.
what I'm currently doing is I'm just doing some flips where it's in North Carolina, and and I'm the investor, or I should say the bank, and the person who's doing the flip is I'm loaning him money at like anywhere from 12.5 to 15%, and he's usually flipping them in about 3 to 4 months, maybe 5 at the max. But I'm getting the whole 12.5 or 15% for the whole 3 or 4 months rather than for the year. And I am, I'm more at risk than most people who are loaning money. So I mean, you have to look at that as well. Like if I'm loaning $90,000, he might be buying the property for 60, and then he's fixing it up for 30, but that 30,000 stays in escrow and is released, or the guy who's flipping the property will take a draw by showing me receipts and pictures after so many months of doing the transaction. So it isn't 100%, but it is overall 100% loan to value. But the caveat is he doesn't get the money all at once. And we've been doing this now for a couple of years. So if he does 3 a year, even at 12%, you're making roughly 35 to 36% on your money.
Yeah.
I
So
don't
what?
feel there's
So what Ken's saying is like, okay, if he loans $100,000, he's getting back uh one one
12, 12 to
110.
15,000 depending on when they close.
Yeah, 12. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Right. So 12,000 guaranteed, but he's, instead of taking a year to do it, he's doing it in 4 months. So Ken is, let's just say, recycling that same 100,000 3 times in the same year, and if he's making the 12%, but that's annualized. So it's a joint venture. Really, what you're doing is a joint venture equity split, which you deserve because number one, you took the time to create the relationship. Number two, you're putting up all the money. You have more risk and more oversight in the whole thing. But you've
Right.
taken a lot more active role. But then he's getting $36,000 in interest, ideally. Let's just say on that same 100,000, that's over 30% just being the lender. But it's really, to me, that's more of a joint venture arrangement
Yeah.
where, one person finds the deal, does all the sweat equity, the other person puts in all the money, and you kind of split it. But instead of you splitting it, you just have your guaranteed, I'm going to make my, 12,000 or 15,000, consider it a
Right.
$100,000 loan.
And he
And
also
that,
he also he also agreed to do a term insurance or some type of an insurance policy where he lists me as the beneficiary for, let's say, $600,000, because we might have anywhere from $500,000 to $600,000 invested, but usually the turnover is such where we probably only have 3 to 400,000 at any given time. So in case something should happen to him, God forbid,
right.
and no one can finish, 4 or 5 projects that he's doing, rather than worried about trying to take over the properties, I would rather, get paid with an insurance policy and then let them deal with the houses, or maybe the houses would also be part of mine as well. So you get both buckets basically. So I don't know how that would all work out, but at least we're trying to cover our risks by, in case something would happen to him, because he's a key figure, key employee, if
Right.
you will.
Mm-hmm.
And he's definitely cooperated on that. And like I say, I hope nothing ever does happen. he deserves all the money he can get on his end, even though he's not putting up any money on his end. He's watching all the contractors. He has to do all this sweat equity, so forth and so on. For $100,000 investment for the whole year, I don't mind making $36,000 to $50,000. You know.
Right, right, right. So the kid's doing well because he's making money out of just his sweat and his ability to find deals
Right.
without a dollar out of his own pocket. So
That's right.
it's a good deal for both of you because you've just found a good niche together. And aren't you taking a trip out there to just meet
Yes,
him
we
face to
are. I'm
face
planning
soon?
on going out there for one day just to kind of see a couple of his projects and also just to meet him because of the fact that I believe that, in the future, this relationship could mean a lot for both of us because he's just doing a fantastic job. And it's just nice. I'm going to have my wife because she's investing now as well. So I'll have her see at firsthand what's going on. And like I say, the niche that we're going after is a 60 to $80,000 house when fixed up is going to sell for about 130. So we're not
Right.
talking brain surgery or huge amounts of money where even if all hell broke loose, that house is probably still going to be worth close to $100,000 after they fix it, and we're into it for 90 anyway. So I don't think there's a downside to the whole thing.
Right. I mean, there again, it's secured by bread and butter, single family, where most
Sport.
average Americans can afford that property, and everyone
Right.
needs a roof over their head. So it's not like you have some wild thing going on.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. I mean, isn't that, don't you guys think that's pretty impressive? I mean, when Ken told me that the other week, I'm like, oh my God, that is a great thing that you've set up there. But, you know, that's the kind of thing that everyone wants to sit back and get on a passive basis, but you've had to be a lot more active in searching that out and taking more risk and figuring, it's not something you've created that yourself. You're not going to get that handed to you from a broker somewhere and
Right.
still feel comfortable with the risk. I would think.
Exactly. And it helps to know a little bit about the use of the calculator that you're going over today because he was looking at, instead of the 15%, are you willing to do 12.5%? And then, he's looking into the insurance for me. So there's a lot of give and take and stuff. And if you look at all the options and you put things down on paper and you just look over everything, I mean, again, it doesn't take 15 different investments. Just a couple of investments and just one or two people who you trust can really make the difference in these transactions. I mean, because rather than searching for 15 to 100 people out there, if you know
Right.
4 or 5 people that are doing it over and over and over, and you're the bank, why
Exactly.
not find somebody
Exactly.
for a lot rather than just, here onesies and twosies and whatever, put all your money. Now you're putting all your eggs in one basket, more or less. But if you know and are educated in that one little area or that niche that you're doing, then why not? Just like Warren Buffett, he's very well educated in the stock market, and that's what he does. He does stocks, and he's very wealthy doing it because he knows what he's doing.
Well, and then you are protecting yourself against the all your eggs in one basket sort of thing because of the key man life insurance that you're having to take.
Exactly, exactly. And
Right.
again, the collateral of the property. If anything happened, God forbid, and most of these projects get done in like 3 months, you still have a $90,000 investment that you have a brand new house with a new roof, new windows, new counters, new doors, new everything that can rent for probably $1,000 to $1,200 and still make your 8 or 9% worst case scenario, return on investment if you had to take back the houses.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. You know, sometime soon we'll do a what if scenario on that, and then I want to in a month I'll know how this other deal we did in Southern California. There was a friend of mine that put up the money for this sort of a joint venture sort of idea, but the problem was the guy underestimated what he would need for the rehab. Plus, he decided he was going to change his plan, and all of a sudden he goes, "Oh, I think I can get another bathroom in this house," and so he totally messed up his draws, and it just turned into a big cluster of a situation. And I will know in almost exactly 1 month from now how that's the final numbers are going to be play out. But it was a humdinger of a situation.
Are
So
you the bank
there
on that
again,
one, John? Are you the bank on that one?
an investor of mine, I put the deal together because I knew the parties, but the guy didn't end up knowing what he was doing. Like, so I thought he did, and he thought he did, and he's a really good talker. So there it comes down to the operator and their experience and whatever. And really, they can't lose money because of how we structured the deal, but it's been way, 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 way more of a headache
Yeah.
than it was ever supposed to be. But it's basically, we just filed a notice of trustee sale
Yeah.
yesterday. So we will know, like I said, by the 11th of May, how that one's going to play out. I mean, they're at no risk of losing money, but it's like just like Chris and Susan, they're having to deal with. We've had a couple deals that haven't gone according to plan, and it's not like it's horrible and financially, but it's just a really big pain in the butt to have to now deal with all these contracts and all these things, and it's not the passive investment that people sign up for. Is sometimes it turns into a job. And that's part of investing in notes and why you can make 8, 9, 10 and 30% because you're doing more work and you're taking more risk, and sometimes it turns into elbow grease that you didn't expect if you have to take a property back or something. But
Yeah.
all good comments, and Axel, let's keep these in for the the final version for the club, because this kind of conversation, it's so good. So don't edit this out for that, even though I didn't have slides or do anything with it. So all right,
That's
well,
fine, no problem.
okay, cool. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you guys showing up and sharing this evening with me, and I appreciate you very much. And until next time, have a good one.
You too,
Thank you,
John.
Don.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.